Did atheist Richard Dawkins accidentally reveal an agenda that could ruin Christianity? Now, this agenda is a mind virus, if you will, that has been pervasive all throughout culture. Everyone from Joe Biden to most recently and notable J. Cole. And what if Richard Dawkins' goal was never to disprove Christianity, but simply hijack it and take it in a direction that completely robs it of its essence? And this agenda of sorts even ties into the recent back and forth between Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and J. Cole. Now, before you go, Ruslan, you're reaching, just bear with me till the end of this video. I'm sorry, I'm a rapper. This is just how my brain works. But the most important thing about this entire conversation is if you're not careful, you may see this train of thought come up with your friends, your family, and even yourself. But before we get into that, guys, my name is Ruslan. This channel exists to encourage, empower, and inspire you to live a life that blesses God. If you're new here or if you're not new here, please hit that subscribe button. We reach over 1 million unique visitors every single month, and a huge percentage of you guys, unfortunately, are not subscribed. Also, today's video is brought to you by our very own Bless God shop, where you could pick up some of our high quality apparel as well as our brand new Bless God prayer journal to help you organize your quiet time and your prayers. As you know, we don't do brand deals on this channel, so going to the shop is a great way to support what we're doing here. So consider heading over to blessgod.shop. Now, let's get into this video. J. Cole did not just diss Kendrick Lamar. He did something much worse. But before we get into that, let's first go back and unpack what Richard Dawkins recently said that set the internet ablaze.
What would be your Easter message? I mean, I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer. But there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. It's true that statistically the number of people who actually believe in Christianity is going down, and I'm happy with that. But I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. So I count myself a cultural Christian. I think it would matter if we substituted any alternative religion. That would be truly dreadful.
Now, to be fair, Richard Dawkins has professed to be a cultural Christian for decades. What was new here was that he was alarmed that in his desire to minimize the belief aspect of Christianity, we have since seen a decline of Christianity in the West. Shout out to the new Atheist for that. And an increase of celebrations like Ramadan and thousands of mosques being built all over Europe. And here is where my friend Gavin Ortlund from Truth Unites rightfully said this.
Now, what I want to say in response very briefly here is that it's very naive to think you can keep the cultural benefits of Christianity without Christianity wholesale and the doctrines of Christianity. To me, this is like if somebody says, well, I like nourishment and health, but I just don't want to eat food. Or, I like sitting on this branch of the tree, but let's just saw off the trunk of the tree.
And Gavin in this video goes on to quote Tom Holland, who lays out the fact that so many of our values in the West are anchored on Christianity. And these values are more Christian than we realize. Everything from our Good Samaritan laws to human dignity and human value, to do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, and very significantly, how we treat women in the West versus other parts of the world. And this idea of trying to detangle Christianity and its benefits from the roots or beliefs of Christianity was really driven home by Glenn from the Speak Life YouTube channel. Check out how he connects this line of thinking Richard Dawkins has with the recent developments we saw with Joe Biden, a self-proclaimed Catholic, and some of his latest statements put out by the White House.
But if he doesn't like a Christian society, well, guess what? You don't just get a neutral society. You get either what we're seeing in the UK, which is, Ramadan's on the rise and mosque buildings on the rise. We'll get into that in this video. Or you have the progressive kind of transgender and LGBTQIA+, and you've got that kind of settlement, which, if you're going to place your Transvisibility Day on the 31st of March, which is Easter Sunday, you are saying that this is a day that should occupy sacred space. And it is not the case that if Christianity retreats, you just have this neutral place that is, a kind of a spiritual Switzerland. No, other truth claims, other ideologies, other religions will flood into that space, whether it's Islam or whether it's some of the new religious ideologies and identities. On matters of gender and sexuality, it's not that when you get rid of Christianity, you just have very sane, rational, reasonable arguments that we can all agree to in this secular space. What you have is Transvisibility Day occupying Easter Sunday in the popular consciousness. And Richard Dawkins is unnerved by that. He's unnerved by Islam. But what's his alternative? His alternative is a cultural Christianity that has no roots. So what's the future of that?
So what Speak Life is getting at is that we run into two things. The first is the deceptive notion that neutrality exists. That if you can remove Christianity from society, things will just become neutral. You keep some of the morals that you like, and then everything else falls in place. The other is that you have cognitive dissonance. You have opposing ideas like we're seeing spread all over Europe. These ideas may encompass some of the things that we find reprehensible in the West from Islam, for example. Specifically, how women are treated, how LGBT people are treated. And that cognitive dissonance, that double-mindedness, if you will, isn't just exhibited in Richard Dawkins. It's actually exhibited in J. Cole's recent back and forth with Kendrick Lamar. Let me explain. For people who don't understand, hip-hop is not like other genres of music. Hip-hop is based and anchored on the idea of the battle. It has much more of the bravado found in things like mixed martial arts and basketball than the gentleman-like characteristics found in things like golf or bocce ball. Most people would say that rap is a contact sport, if you will. Now, I know that sounds crazy for those people that don't participate, but it brings us to the latest spat between Drake and Kendrick and J. Cole. Long story short, these guys have been kind of subliminally dissing each other for decades, specifically with Drake towards Kendrick. And Kendrick, in his latest release on Metro Boomin's and Drake's album, said he is done with the subliminal disses. He is going directly at the quote-unquote big three. The big three includes himself, J. Cole, and Kendrick Lamar. He said, F the big three, it's just big me, making it overt that he has issues now with Drake and J. Cole. Most people put the onus on Drake to respond. However, it was J. Cole that dropped a song this past weekend called 7-Minute Drill, going directly at Kendrick Lamar, making fun of his height and his fake deep persona. This led fans of hip-hop saying, this is what the genre's been missing. Finally, there's some back and forth. Finally, there's some competition happening. The song encompassed multiple bars about violence and illegal accessories on firearms and things that you just wouldn't understand if you're not a part of the culture. Some would say that these are hyperbolic metaphors about how much more skilled J. Cole is than Kendrick Lamar. With lyrics such as, put pictures in my home, aim chrome at your eyelids, fly pebbles at your dome, we the Stone Temple Pilots. This is merely a warning shot. And then, to everyone's surprise,
a few moments later,
J. Cole apologized for the song. Yes, you heard it correctly. The song comes out Friday. By Sunday at his own festival, J. Cole apologizes to Kendrick Lamar. He goes on to say, how many of y'all think Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest rappers to ever pick up a mic? Haven't been asleep in the last few days. We taken that song off streaming services. And the biggest quote of this all saying, that's the lamest ish I've ever done in my effing life. But what is the root of J. Cole's behavior the past several days? How do you do gun bars about shooting up people's house only to apologize 48 hours later? Before I unpack that idea, let me just first say that J. Cole has had quite a few W's in his career. He accurately predicted the downfall of Lil Pump and even tried to give him some wisdom in their sit-down conversation from a few years ago.
Did you ever feel like, almost like, why you choosing this dude over me? Like,
nah, yeah, that's exactly how I felt.
He once upon a time pulled up on Adam 22 for perpetuating the FJ Cole campaign and challenged him on his views about being an atheist.
I got questions actually. I don't think about this right here. My thing is like, as an atheist, does your non-belief in God come from a turn off that religion, like religion turns you off? Or did it come from like years of thinking like, that doesn't make sense to me, like that there's anything, any power higher than...
To me, to be honest, I found out that I didn't believe in God when I was like 12.
There's even a possibility that a God exists. Or like, and when I say God, obviously clearly there's mad associations that come with that and like an idea of that. But remove that idea, and do you believe in any type of spirituality? Like, do you think that that's possible?
Now, this was years ago, and I love that he asked Adam 22 about his views on religion, why is he an atheist, and the possibility of a God, which I think is very commendable. I asked Adam 22 some of these same questions. But J. Cole doesn't ascribe to a specific religion. To some people, maybe he's spiritual but not religious. To others, maybe he is a cultural Christian, much like Richard Dawkins. But when you navigate life this way, you run into opposing worldviews conflicting. And we saw that made real this past weekend. We saw him go after an acquaintance of his over a rap song with some questionable lines and referring to himself as a god, while 2 days later feeling convicted and apologizing for it. The scriptures use the word double-mindedness, meaning that this is someone who has faith but is double-minded in the faith they have. In James chapter 1, verse 6, it says, "But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do." So in operating this way, J. Cole has in a way alienated everyone. He alienated his fans that were excited that he finally responded to Kendrick Lamar and in the process made some of the best music we've heard from him. He's alienated the casual rap fan that is looking for competition in the sport despite all the gun bars and debauchery. And this did pull on the heartstrings of certain Christian fans of hip-hop music, but the apology only 48 hours after releasing the song seems a bit incongruent. That he had time to hear Kendrick's song, consult with different friends that pulled him in different directions, make his song, get the song mixed, get the song uploaded to DSPs, and then instantly regret it. It reminds me of this pretty jarring passage in 2 Timothy chapter 3. Now, I'm not saying this is specifically about J. Cole or that J. Cole is some evil person from this. I think J. Cole is conflicted. I think J. Cole is trying to figure out his life, but it does make me think of the mentality around this. Check this out. Paul writes, "Timothy, that you should know this, in the last days there will be very difficult times, for people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving, unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly." Stay away from people like that. They will act religious, but will reject the power of what could make them godly. Now, let's bring this full circle back to a point that Glenn from Speak Life Media made about Richard Dawkins' claim to being a cultural Christian.
I happen to believe that Jesus walked out of that tomb 2,000 years ago, that on the first Easter Sunday, the non-living Jesus became living again. That is a miracle. In one sense, that's really hard to believe. But the miracle that Richard Dawkins believes in is orders of magnitude more improbable. I think the non-living Jesus became living. Richard Dawkins thinks that all life emerged from non-life, and without a God of resurrection to work the wonder. That's quite the miracle, right? When I say I believe that the non-living Jesus became living again, I'm not offering you one more absurdity that you can add to your worldview. I'm offering you the inner logic that explains a universe that would otherwise be absurd. You see, Richard Dawkins doesn't know how to answer the four most fundamental questions. Why have we got everything from nothing? Why have we got order from chaos? Why have we got life from non-life? Why have we got consciousness from mindless matter? Why have we got any of these things? All of these are Easter-like miracles. All of these are life from the dead. All of those make a virgin birth and Jesus walking out of the Jerusalem tomb look like child's play. The miracles at the heart of the Easter story are there to explain what would otherwise be absurd. They are not themselves the absurdity.
So that same power that raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that can make us godly. And rejecting that power is more absurd than embracing that power. Gavin put it this way.
So at the very least, I would say this. If you reject Christianity, don't think you've got some kind of non-mysterious alternative to it. Any worldview available to us on the market is fundamentally deeply mysterious. We can't cover and canvas all of reality out there through science, okay? And if you want to reject Christianity, don't naively assume you can retain the bits of it that you happen to like universal human dignity. The more you think about it, and I will say, the more you study human history, the more you see that's naive. It's really hard to see where you get these good fruits apart from the roots, to change the metaphor a little bit.
So these statements that Richard Dawkins made, in my opinion, is the mind virus. It is the potential hidden agenda that can try to take down Christianity. And it's all based on the presupposition that you can have morality without God. And J. Cole doesn't seem to be rejecting the idea of God. Instead, based on his lyrics and his behavior, he seems to be rejecting the idea of Christianity and then changing his mind and behaving in a way that's a bit aligned with how a Christian should act in this situation. And this ultimately comes down to something called syncretism, which is the attempt to fuse different worldviews together to create this hodgepodge of sorts. That is a lot of what's been happening in our society. And I want you to be aware of it, first and foremost, so that you can avoid thinking this way. And this ultimately should lead us to live a life that blesses God. The Apostle Paul said it this way in Philippians chapter 4. Verse 8, it reads, Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you have learned and received from me. That the roots and beliefs of our faith need to be put in practice in the way we decide to live our lives, treat others, and continue leaning into the beauty and the goodness that Jesus has for us on this side of eternity. And in my opinion, the most important step you can take right now to discover what all that means for you is to discover what God's purpose is for you in this current season. So check out this playlist we put together right here, going over all of that in great detail. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.